Hello and welcome to the Events Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Taylor, and each week I talk with event professionals about how they plan, promote, and run their events. We help you build your events empire by growing your business around live events. Whether you're running small meetups or conferences, trade shows, and concerts, we focus on finding actionable tips that you can use straight away. So it's Monday the 25th of March as I record this early in the morning. I'm just back from Poland for a family visit. It was really great. As I think most of you know, I live in Prague in the Czech Republic. My wife is from Poland, from Poznan. So we drove up to meet her parents, which is great. It's kind of a nice 5-hour drive. We drove up. You can actually drive directly from Prague to Poland, but we normally go via Berlin, just around the Berlin ring road, because it's really good autobahn the whole way. And I kind of like these drives. I get to kind of catch up on podcasts. You know, I listen to 5 hours of podcasts on the way up. I listen to a great audiobook on the way back. So I'm a real kind of, use your car as a university on wheels. If I'm driving somewhere, I love to have this audio stuff going on. So that was great. Got back from Poland yesterday. Only in Prague for 2 days. We're off to Amsterdam on Tuesday. It's great. I'm taking the family. We've got it's called a PD Partner Summit. PD is professional development. So we're a Google AppsEvents. We're a Google PD partner. And it's a great session. It's an all-day session in Amsterdam. There's a bunch of partners from around Europe. I'm going to be giving a talk on how to secure sponsorships. So I just need to do a bit of preparation for that today. It's going to be in the Google office in Amsterdam, which I've never been to. So really looking forward to that. We've got an Airbnb in the Jordaan, which if anyone's been to Amsterdam, the Jordaan's kind of like, it's pretty hipster now. I guess everywhere is, but it's just kind of west, I guess, of the center. Really cool place. And the wife and baby can wander around while I'm doing my Google stuff, and then we'll have a free day together on Thursday. So we've got that going on. In terms of AppsEvents, we've got a really busy weekend coming up. We've got a London summit at the French School in London, the Lycée International Winston Churchill, I think it's called, which is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Ben Rouse, the UK director, is going to be running that. Veronica, who's the European director, is going across as well. We've also got a Qatar summit, which is great. We've run 5 or 6 events in Qatar now. And in terms of how we organize AppsEvents, we have Middle East and Asia as one area. So James, who runs Middle East and Asia, is Qatar. And then the great news is James, who's actually James Sayer, who's the co-host of this podcast, who rarely makes an appearance. He's going to be coming to Prague directly after Qatar. He's going to stay here for 3 days, which is great. So we're going to record a couple of podcasts together, hang out, work together, strategize. So really looking forward to that. Now, James, as well as working for AppsEvents, he's also a partner on EventsFrame. And just a pretty good segue onto EventsFrame. EventsFrame is the sponsor of this podcast. It's a ticketing system. It's super cheap. Please check it out. It's built by event professionals for event professionals. AppsEvents use it for all their 300 plus events a year. We've got multiple companies using it, companies like SAP, MIT in Boston. Lots of small event organizers use it. So check it out. The great thing is it's great for people running multiple events. It's got amazing discount codes and it's very cheap. You pay no ticket fees. So if you use Eventbrite, you pay almost 4% of the ticket fees. If you use TicketTailor or any of these systems, you pay a high ticket fee. With EventsFrame, you just pay a low monthly fee from $20 a month. That's all it is. And you can run as many events as you want. Check it out. And if you're interested, please send me an email, dan@eventsframe.com, dan@events, eventsframe.com, with the subject line podcast. And I'm going to give you a special secret discount code that is only for listeners of this podcast. So on to this week's interview. This interview was a little bit different. I was a guest on the Demio podcast with David Abrams. It's actually called the SaaS Breakthrough Podcast, and SaaS means software as a service. And David actually interviewed me, which was really interesting. He wanted to talk about EventsFrame, and a lot of listeners to this podcast are always asking me about EventsFrame, what's the story? And so I got to talk about it, which was amazing. I don't often get to talk about the story behind EventsFrame and all the struggles we had starting an early stage business. So it was great to repost it here. I recommend everyone go and check out David's podcast. It's called the SaaS Breakthrough Podcast. You can find it over at demio.com, demio.com. But it was a really great chat, and we talked all about what it's like to start a business in the event space, and we got into a lot of really interesting stuff that I don't normally talk about. I really was completely honest about all our numbers. So if you want to learn the reality of starting an event tech business, this is where you're going to find it. So thanks again for listening. We really appreciate it. Just one final ask. If you enjoy this podcast, please just share with one person. If you could just tell one person about the podcast. It's a way we're sort of growing slowly. We know with this podcast, we're not trying to be like a Joe Rogan, like, a multi-million listener podcast. We're really niche. We're focused on people that want to use events to help grow their business. But, we want to grow it slowly. So please, if you could tell one person about this, we would really, really appreciate it. So thanks again for listening, and on to the interview.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 57 of the SaaS Breakthrough Show, brought to you by Demio. The SaaS Breakthrough Show will be an inside look at what is working in marketing for SaaS companies today by the marketers who are in the trenches, experimenting on a daily basis to grow their MRR and build amazing businesses. My name is David Abrams, and I'll be your host today as we bring on Dan Taylor, who is an entrepreneur who has co-founded 4 startups. After starting his career in management consulting with Deloitte, he founded Dunros Consulting, an IT consulting agency which was sold in a management buyout in 2011. Following from this, he founded a SaaS product called Course Director in the Google for Education ecosystem. This company was acquired by WizKids from Denmark in 2013. Incredible. Following from the sale, he founded and runs 2 companies. AppsEvents, a Google professional development partner that organizes Google education summits and training events worldwide, over 300 annually, which we talk about in this episode, and EventsFrame, a ticketing SaaS for event organizers with no ticket fees. It's the big SaaS that we discussed today. Outside of tech, he loves exploring, surfing, snowboarding, and squash. And on today's episode, we'll be talking about the pros and cons of building your own SaaS based on your own pain. We'll talk about what it's like to still be in the early stages of your SaaS and the lessons that they learned from actually doing an AppSumo deal early. What worked, what didn't work. We go into real detail here. We talk about understanding early stage virality, what to think about with your product, and how to build it early. The integration marketing strategies you need to know, and how to plan for those strategic partnerships, and what it actually takes to get momentum in the early days of SaaS. This is a really incredible episode. It's a unique perspective into the early days of building that software project, especially if you have another company or another business that's already running and then you're creating something based on a pain you found in one of those previous businesses. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please don't forget to head over to iTunes and leave us a rating, a comment, questions. We want to hear from you, and those ratings and reviews on iTunes does help us get this podcast out to more amazing viewers like yourself. But we have tons to talk about today. Let's go ahead and let's jump on with Dan.
This is the SaaS Breakthrough Podcast, uncovering what's working today in SaaS marketing by the actual SaaS marketers who are building companies day in and day out. Let's get started.
Hey, Dan, thanks so much for joining me today on the SaaS Breakthrough Podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited. We're going to have an interesting conversation about early stage SaaS companies and what it's like to actually get traction in. I want to learn more about where you guys are. Before we jump into that traction conversation, why don't you give us a brief background about your company, EventsFrame, when you founded it, who the customers are currently, and what you're trying to accomplish here in the marketplace?
Sure. Well, we started the company in beginning of, end of 2017, start of 2018. And I guess to give the company story, I need to go back like a little bit further than that, because I'm founder and CEO of also another company called AppsEvents, which is actually an events company. We're a Google for Education partner. So we do a lot of technical training, but also a lot of training for schools on using Google. So I started this company back in 2012. I ended up running, I ran the first ever European Google for Education event, and then I did one in Bangkok. And it kind of, I had a different SaaS back then. And I never kind of intended to end up running an events company. I ran an event to promote the SaaS. It went really well and made some money out of it. And then Google were like, do you want to run another one? And then I've grown it, So like last year we ran about 300 events. So to come back to our SaaS is called EventsFrame. I'm terrible at naming companies, by the way. So AppsEvents is the events company, and EventsFrame is the SaaS. But the reason we started as SaaS back in 2017 was I was kind of, like most people who run events, you start off with Eventbrite, which is obviously the biggest player in the market. That's kind of, relatively low cost. You pay about 3% of ticket fees. And then it was getting expensive and I wasn't that happy with the service. And then we looked around for a bunch of other solutions. So we originally started developing the product because I wanted to build it for my own company. Now, I had a big company running 300 plus events. It was worthwhile to do the investment to build a SaaS. I'd built and sold a SaaS before. So that was kind of the region, the origin of starting the business.
Got it. Makes sense. And what kind of customers are you bringing in now that the app is kind of past the 1 year mark?
Well, it's a real variation. We did an AppSumo, for which I'm sure we'll talk about later.
Definitely.
But most of our customers are people running conferences, like entrepreneurs running maybe one or several conferences, people running meetups, people running training sessions, IT training and other sessions. So it's generally the smaller end of the market, entrepreneurs and SMEs, usually running several events a year.
And I guess just give us a little bit of overview of like what the platform does that's unique, I guess, compared to the other players already out there.
Sure. Well, EventsFrame is a ticketing platform. So it's a way to sell tickets online, similar to Eventbrite. What we've done, I guess there's a lot of players in this market. We're very unique in the pricing in that we don't have a ticket fee. So typically, like I mentioned, Eventbrite and other companies, they'll charge you anything up to 3 or 4% of the value of the ticket typically. And we just have a flat low cost. So, the only cost, you pay as a monthly fee starting from $20 a month. And the only cost you'll pay is to PayPal, Stripe, or Braintree, like we integrate with all of them. So yeah, that's kind of now.
So you're launching a competitive platform in kind of a heavy hitting industry. Obviously there's Eventbrite and a bunch of other, ticketing systems out there. And it sounds like pricing is the main differentiation. Listen, MarTech is really hard to build into. Software right now, SaaS is really hard to build into because there are so many competitive softwares. How are you guys specifically trying to find your segment, your product market fit? How are you really going to bring in the right customer base, or who is that customer base?
Yeah. Well, look, first of all, I really need to improve my pitch skills because there's a couple of other differentiators as well. I think another one is we're really good for people running multiple events. Most of these systems, you have a separate dashboard for each event and you can combine this. So I guess we've got two things as well, which is the integrations. We've really focused more than anybody. Obviously, Demio was our first webinar. So integrations in this. So yeah, that. But in terms of product market fit, I think we very much started off in terms of I knew the customer persona of my company. Maybe we focused a bit too much on not being realistic about it, but I knew one type of company, a company who ran a lot of events a year. I knew all the things they needed because it was my company, and I guess we built it originally just to go after similar people. It was basically based on kind of that use case.
Got it. And I think a lot of SaaS companies are built from that, right? You're solving your own pain. Demio itself built the exact same way. We built it off our own pain, but we learned a lot along the way that maybe like our use case and our story wasn't the best basis to build an entire company for. So we did a lot of conversations in the marketplace, and a lot of changes has happened from early product, even pre-release to release to now. All things have changed.
Yeah.
Are you finding that that's true for you? Or are you finding that, building the pain point product, like a product for your own pain point has kind of met with market, needs?
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of companies are different. There's like a lot, even basic things. Like for example, we run all these conferences, even some big ones with 200 people, but we never check anybody in. And we realized pretty quickly that like one example was lots of people wanted QR code check-in. So we had to build that pretty quick, and we realized that, because I don't come from an events background, I come from a technical background. I'm running this events company. Like I just kind of like an idiot, just tried to I set up my own way of running events. And whereas there was everyone else was doing it completely differently, So yeah, definitely. We've definitely run up, I think, against us not being the typical customer. But, it was close enough to get us initial customers, but it wasn't exactly right. That's for sure.
For sure. So it sounds like there's still education and learning to do right now, still things that we got to figure out in
Definitely.
the market, how to find the right customer base. Now, you mentioned before, like your initial customer acquisition strategy was AppSumo. Now, I'm not talking about like beta or anything like that, but just like you did an AppSumo deal when you
Yes.
kind of launched everything like that. I think a lot of early stage companies, especially newer SaaS companies that are looking to bring in customers fast, quickly, are looking at those AppSumo deals saying, hey, is this going to be a good, is an LTD deal right for us? Is that going to be the right customer acquisition? Let's talk about it. How did it go for your company?
It was good and bad. There was some disastrous things. There were some good things. I think, look, if I had to do it, if the question was, if I could do it over again, would I? I would, but I'd do it very differently. So, it's kind of a guarded answer. You know what I mean? I would do it again, but I would definitely change a lot of how we did it.
Okay, so I guess let's talk about it from that perspective. What strategy did you go in with? And then looking back on it, what were those major lessons or things that you would change in the future?
Sure. Well, we had a bit of prior knowledge. I've got two co-founders, and Simon, my technical co-founder, he was actually technical co-founder of Lead Pages actually back in the day. But he'd done an AppSumo offer before, so he knew a bit about it. But he wasn't really that involved in it, so his kind of information was really good, but it wasn't kind of a hands-on. What really happened is, the way AppSumo works is, like you said, you do a lifetime offer. You keep a third of the money, roughly speaking. So AppSumo keep 2/3, you keep a third. So our offer was really low; it was like $50. So you're not making a huge amount of money. You're making sort of $15 an offer. Now, how we did it is, and again, we didn't get much guidance from AppSumo about this. That's one thing I think would really help if they did. But we, a lot of companies, when they do an AppSumo offer, what they do is they've got a really well built out product, and they offer a limited subset of functionality for the AppSumo offer, and then they try to upsell to all the other ones. That's the way I would do it now. I'd build more functionality than we have. I'd launch with AppSumo because I've bought a few AppSumo offers myself, and the good guys are really good at selling within the app by various ways, intercom and different things. We didn't do that. We basically we were almost ready with our product. Well, we were using it. We had a couple of other customers, but we basically launched and then ended up promising a lot of extra features to the Sumolings, the AppSumo people, and then that kind of wasted 3 to 4 months building all these functions. I think that was a big mistake we made.
Right. And then what happens is you're still struggling to find true product market fit, and yet you spent 3 to 4 months going down this roadmap building features and functions for these people that are
not really your customers, because some of them are great. There's a real mixture between the Sumo people. Some of them are great entrepreneurs, and some of them, they're just like a real pain in the backside. They're really like they harass you about little things, and then you build the feature and they never even use it. So there's a real mix in the type of people you get on there.
I guess then looking at it, would there be any insights or changes to how you would handle kind of a roadmap if someone was also going through the AppSumo process?
I wouldn't. Yeah, exactly. I would. Like for example, I can give you the big one. So the big thing we did, which I wouldn't do again, is so what happens is, with AppSumo, I don't know if you've ever bought an AppSumo offer, but you can do what they call stack code. So if one deal is $50, lifetime, you can stack 10 and you get extra things. And a lot of people were saying, we want an agency plan. And they weren't really clear what an agency plan was, but what it basically meant was, they wanted to buy multiple codes. So each code allowed you to run unlimited events, which again was a big mistake. It was unlimited, and they wanted to buy multiple ones and then kind of manage events for customers and have it all under their dashboard. You know what I mean? So they wanted to this, and then we were kind of getting all these people. And I can talk you through how to, the detail of how we really, because we did a really good AppSumo offer, but I can tell you how to do that. But a lot of the Sumolings were saying, we want this agency plan, and then AppSumo themselves were saying, can you do this agency plan? And we did it, and it ended up being, when I say the 3 to 4 months of development, most of it was to build this agency plan. And we're not really sure, like you said, about product market fit. We've sold this to a few people, but it hasn't been a big, sale. It wasn't the thing we would have spent 3 to 4 months working on,
Definitely. And that makes a lot of sense. And that's really kind of the danger zone that you can go into by doing those things. Would you say, kind of looking back now, and by the way, I love AppSumo, so nothing, I don't want to.
No, it's a great company. And like I said, I would do it again. I just would do it differently.
Totally. Would you say it would be more beneficial to launch it in more of a mature SaaS area than as like your first launch, your early stage launch, because of all the things that are expected out of it?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I would. I guess the thing is, though, if you've already got some established, you probably don't need the AppSumo. It's kind of chicken and egg. For us, it was a great way to get some money, which was great. It basically covered our development costs, which was really cool so far. So, and it got a bunch of customers onto the system. So I would do it a bit later. I would have just held on, and then, like I said, launch with a limited subset of functionality. And I wouldn't promise anything, because anything you promise, even if you just say, there's a forum, and one of the tips if you do an AppSumo offers, they've got an AppSumo forum, and you've really got to stay on top of all the questions, and the same questions come in time and time again. You've got to answer it again and again. They don't. You can't upvote questions, so they appear. But anything you say to someone, they're on you. Like, we want this, we want this, we want this. So I wouldn't promise. I do it if you do an offer. I wouldn't promise any functionality, I'd promise even less than you already have.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. And, appreciate you kind of sharing some of that knowledge base. So now that you have some customers in, even if, they're not all utilizing the product, you have that customer generation starting. You also have really been looking into how you add virality,
yes,
a viral coefficient, into not only marketing, but into the product itself, which is always a tough thing to do. It's tough to figure out how to do that. How have you guys been looking at product and, I guess, product marketing to build in virality?
Definitely. Well, I mean, it's a big thing in the ticketing event software space, because if you think about it, you run we've got people on our system run events for 3,000 to 4,000 people. I mean, that's 3,000 to 4,000 potential customers, you could have. So the virality is a big thing. You've got to balance it, because, of course, you don't want to annoy your clients, by advertising your product. So there's a couple of ways we've done it. The first way is, with EventsFrame, we have we kind of have a powered by EventsFrame link at the bottom. So, with our system, you can embed the tickets in your own website in WordPress or whatever, or we've got a landing page builder, so you can use our landing page. So first of all, we put a powered by EventsFrame. People have the option to remove that, because some people don't want the EventsFrame logo, but then it still says, at the bottom in kind of smaller writing, ticketing provided by EventsFrame. It's actually a legal requirement in the country we're incorporated. So we have our name and a clickable link on every kind of ticket, every customer screen. So that's the first way, And then the second way is, when a customer buys a ticket, when a customer of our customer buys a ticket, the email they get, has also powered by EventsFrame or ticketing provided by EventsFrame at the bottom. So that's really the two ways we've got the virality is on the landing page and for ticketing, and on the emails for the attendees of events.
Are you utilizing plan segmentation to have a plan type that allows people to remove that, or do you always want to have that for just that kind of viral coefficient?
We will. I think we will definitely. I mean, the funny thing is, our paying customers have never complained about this. It's only the AppSumo customers who've complained about it, But yes, you're right. We will have an option based on a tiered plan to remove it, for sure.
I think that is what we keep talking about, is one of the hardest things, especially early stage, to figure out. It's that roadmap priority based on customer segment. And that's why I like to start off by asking about product market fit, because you have to prioritize the features, the functions, the roadmap, the things that matter most to the customers that will utilize the platform the best. So it's really hard to appease everyone. And especially if you're bringing in, let's say, 3,000 AppSumo customers early stage, but then you also have to balance that with finding product market fit. That's where the challenge really comes in. So you just have to be careful of that. Do you have any metrics with the virality marketing stuff? Do you know, or any tips on landing pages that you're sending them to after they're clicking on stuff?
No, and we need to. We're actually just launching today. Maybe even when this podcast is live, we're just redoing the website and putting it onto WordPress. But no, we don't, and that's one of the many things we could be doing. We could be doing much better. I just want to add though that this, if you again come back to Eventbrite, don't keep want to mention it, but obviously they're an amazing company and easily the biggest. They just went public in this. I mean, they do it much more extreme with Eventbrite. Everyone, you've probably bought a ticket yourself for Eventbrite. They actually try to get you to become a customer of Eventbrite. They send you a link in the email saying, hey, do you want to sign up for Eventbrite? So they actually really push the attendees to do it. So that's kind of we haven't gone to that level, but that is a level you could potentially go to,
It's always interesting because we kind of face this too when the marketplace, because there's big players that have been around for a while, the marketplace kind of gets numb or used to a specific strategy or thing. And it's funny that you can kind of you can replicate those without pissing people off because they're used to it. Yeah. But if you reduce it, you can still have a little bit of differentiation and add value.
Yeah, that's kind of what we thought. Exactly that, yeah.
You got to try to figure out that perfect middle ground there and still get the results. So yeah, definitely get into tracking, get some custom landing pages up, do some testing. Would love to hear how that goes in the future.
Sure.
And talking about, these different types of marketing, I guess, channels, one of the things you guys are doing early stage right now is starting the integration marketing process, a strategy I love, something that we did early on. And we did it basically for our early stage customers, but it's now kind of transforming as we go up market. This type of marketing takes a while. And you mentioned earlier, Demio is now going to be one of your first webinar integrations.
Yeah, it's our first and only webinar integration actually right now.
That's awesome. We're excited about it, man. But how are you guys, how are you actually doing it right now? Or how are you looking to utilize these integrations for marketing?
Sure. I mean, how we're actually doing it right now is, so we've got, it's mostly email marketing systems. We've got Drip, ConvertKit, MailChimp, MailerLite, Aweber, everything like this. So what we're doing is we built the integration, and then really it's just reaching out, sending these guys an email, trying to get them to feature us on their blog. Basically, that's the thing. We've got Aweber and a couple of others have featured on the blog. Hopefully it will be on your blog, the Demio blog as well. But that's really it. We haven't, and I'm keen if you've got any more tips how we can really leverage this more. But that's it's for us. It's a big we actually genuinely have more integrations than anyone, including Eventbrite. So it's a big sales thing, and we need to get more out of it. That's for sure.
Well, I think it has to be a value-based exchange, right? How can not only the integrations be there, but can you lead a training event for Drip's subscribers who are running events to showcase either how to utilize the tools together? So it's all value-based. You're on the blog, you have a training, you can send them, some type of unique coupon code or something like that, all value-based until that becomes a full-on promotion. But, it depends on what your goal is. Are you looking for backlinks? Are you looking for customer generation? For us, we do a lot of things with our integration partners, from, running co-marketing events, kind of co-sponsoring things with each other, to direct webinars and stuff like that. And sometimes these partnerships take months or even years to fully develop. So you have to understand it's a long-term kind of thing.
Yeah, we've been discussing some of the things you said, doing the webinars, joint promotions. I think, like I said, I think the stage we're at now, and maybe we should go into that stage, but we're just ever trying to build relationship. Obviously, it's been amazing. We've spoke a couple of times. We're trying to get a relationship. Obviously, we want to be on the blog just because hopefully we'll get some traffic and people will see, okay, I'm already using, for example, Demio. EventsFrame is a great way to sell tickets for a Demio webinar. So, hopefully it's going to lead to sales. But right now, we're just trying to, get the initial contact with these companies, and about half, already have. We're already having great discussions. About half, we really haven't got anywhere yet.
Yeah, it takes time. It really does. And sometimes you have to figure out where's the value that we can add to them outside of just being on a blog post or something like that. Can we do something?
That's a great point. Yeah. I think the joint promotion and things is a great one.
Yeah, and another one for us, transparently, is also the podcast. Any way that we can give them value exchange is great. So this podcast has been wonderful for that as well, opening doors and kind of doing that as well. But one of the things you just mentioned before was kind of how you're reaching out to these companies, and you're also doing reach out direct campaigns. Would love to know kind of how that's going, what's been successful in your reach out processes, maybe a couple of tips or tactics for you guys early stage that have been good to get your foot in the door with a lot of these companies.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know what? The best thing for me is exactly what you just said. Is the podcast. We've got a podcast as well. I host a podcast called the Events Podcast, And it's been amazing. Honestly, it's one of the best things. It hasn't led to that much money yet, but in terms of the connections I'm getting with people, and it has led to some sales. I mean, I think I could have used the number of hours I spent on it on direct sales. I would have more customers, but I think long term this will give a better return. Because this podcast is all about anyone who wants to run events, and we've got a real mixture of listeners. So we've got some complete people who run huge events and trade shows and big conferences and music festivals and things. And then we've got most of the people who are kind of entrepreneurs and maybe want to run some events to leverage their community, So this has been great because I can speak to pretty much anyone and get them on the podcast, which has really surprised me. I was surprised how easy it was to do that. And I think it only works because my podcast, because it's established. I'm sure you found the same thing in the beginning when you were doing the first few episodes. People are kind of a bit skeptical, but when they see, okay, they've got a lot of reviews on iTunes, you're doing an episode every week consistently for months. So that, in terms of my reach out, that's been the kind of the first thing I would say that's really worked.
That's awesome. And I would say this is like, if you're going to do a podcast, but you don't have to do a podcast, but if you do that, some lessons that I learned that I'm kind of piggybacking off you is be very niche specific on the podcast you're doing. How can you help your target market and speak about those things? It doesn't have to be an interview series. It can be all educational. It could be 5-minute snippets. You got to be consistent with it. And you got to be ready that it's going to be a long-term thing. Nothing's going to come quickly from it, but over time, you'll gain relationships. You will see direct ROI, but honestly, the biggest thing you'll get is with those relationships. You'll get credibility, you'll get branding, all the great things you're looking for, but just be willing to commit for a solid amount of time to get through it. You said, in the early stages, it's the hardest time. So be ready to try to really get as many emails out there, knowing it's a numbers game. For us, it was just like that. We utilized a lot of connections and friendships and stuff like that to kind of get the ball rolling. And then once it kind of started rolling, we utilized the logos and the names of others to establish credibility into their own podcast to keep that snowball rolling. So that was really good. Any other lessons or thoughts that you have for reach outs?
Yeah, I mean, for me, again, when I've really put time into chasing a company, I've got some sales skills. I've done it in my various companies and jobs and stuff. I've never been a salesman, but I've always had to sell. I've generally been around people who were worse than me at selling, so I was the one who had to do it, kind of. So I found just by literally cold emailing people, getting them on a phone call. I've got customers that way. It's just, when you've got a low price point like we have, $20 up to $250 a month, and most people are on the $20 or $20, $60 a month, it works, but and it's great in the beginning because it gets you some customers, but you start thinking about it. Is it really that scalable? If I did this full time, it would take a long time to really to push the needle. That's kind of the issue I found with it, I guess.
I would say this to you. I would say, always focus on unscalable activities in the beginning until you're ready to scale, especially if you don't have product market fit yet. No joke. At the beginning, I was doing 12-hour days. About 10 hours of that day was on sales calls, just selling. And I just had organic traffic coming in to create demos. And it was just demo, sale. And honestly, they weren't always the best target customers and they weren't our target persona, but I drove MRR from like 0 to 40K in like this unscalable way, And I'm not saying I'm the only reason that we're getting to 40K, but it's just, we took that unscalable activity and just said, let's just hit it hard. Let's just keep going.
It's great to hear you say that because everybody nowadays wants to set up a 4-hour work week business with an amazing, some Facebook ads that lead to some split testing landing pages, and then it's they make a fortune. And if you actually look behind the scenes at so many companies, it's in the beginning, it's old school, smile and dial, just get customers by whatever means possible,
Whatever it takes at the beginning. And I think it's easy to fall in love with the easy strategies, but you'll often see that they don't either produce the best customers, which means higher churn, lower product usage. It doesn't always represent a great long-term strategy. And we're talking early stage. Once you get traction, once you have momentum, you have the right customers, you have the right product market fit, then you scale. Then you're at the good place for that because now you're getting the right customers in, your LTV is expanding, you got expansion revenue, all the good things are in place for your SaaS business to be healthy. But early stage, you just got to be in the mud, in the trenches, and you got to dig deep.
Yeah.
So that's what it is.
Yeah.
What about hard lessons? What about things that you've learned, like lessons like this? Like this is great lessons, but I love to hear obviously the wins. That's what we've talked about. But what about things that have kind of failed, or something that you wished you had done differently along the journey?
Sure. Well, obviously we've talked about the pros and cons of AppSumo. I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn outreach, and like, we talked about the direct approach, and part of that was LinkedIn. I think it wasn't as effective as I thought it would be. I even paid a company. I mean, the guy was really cool, great guy. I don't want to say anything bad about the company. They do an approach where they kind of take over your LinkedIn account, issue connection requests. You sign up for LinkedIn Sales Navigator, issue connection requests, and then send a message sequence. So we did this, and that didn't really bring many leads. Maybe it was because I was a bit hands off and not doing it directly, but that was the LinkedIn approach was one that so far didn't work too well.
Makes sense. And I see those LinkedIn requests all the time. It just becomes instant deletion now for me. It's one of those things that, like, tactics sometimes just go away. Strategy obviously of lead generation is always going to be there, but that tactic may be ending. I don't know. Some people still have good success with it. But I guess, where you are right now, you have, still a large kind of hill to climb, being early stage, so much to do. What are you guys going to focus on here? What is critically important?
Well, yeah, again, I guess this was the other lessons learned is that, so there's three of us who are co-founders. I mean, I came up with the idea and started it, but then I got two other guys involved right at the beginning. One is Simon, he's a developer. Another one is James, who works with me in the other events business. I really wish we'd got a sales and marketing co-founder like right in the beginning. And it's actually one, I'm keen to get your opinion, because actually one of the things I'm thinking of now is trying to get someone in, on a, with obviously a basic salary in the beginning of an investing schedule, get them kind of co-founder status, because we've got a proven product that's profitable. And I think, we're in a good position to do that. But I kind of wish we'd thought about it more in the beginning. I mean, it's tough, because I didn't have somebody handy who I was friends with and I trusted and knew well, who was a sales and marketing co-founder. But I think it would have really helped us.
I think my small piece of advice, we've talked about this before, would just be that sometimes I think it's hard to bring in a marketer early stage, like super early stage, because you don't have really much of a product to market. You can do some early stage branding and videos, kind of cool concepts, but it kind of takes you a little bit of time to just, like we said before, get in the trenches. Here's our product, here's our customers, here's who we're for, and here's what we solve. And then you bring in the marketer and you say, okay, now let's generate new leads, let's generate sales, let's focus on the pipeline, where their sole responsibility is focusing on that stuff. And I think things become so much easier. Now, of course, you can bring in a marketer to help build those things out, but you'll need someone that has, the good experience to do that. So I think you guys would be at a great position to do it if you can afford it. If there's any marketers listening, EventsFrame is looking for a marketer, and there's a lot of equity involved, it sounds like, so that could be kind of a cool fit. But no, I think now would be the right time for you guys. And I always, love the idea of marketers focusing directly on marketing, and it gets off your plate and you can focus on the other major pieces of the company that need to be focused on.
Yeah, definitely. I think it just, and again, I started writing a detailed spec because it's really about getting the right person. I want someone who do like what you and me have done in our careers. It's like, they're not scared to get on the phone or an email and just, do whatever it takes in the beginning, because we're still at the stage of whatever it takes to get customers, and that's kind of a person we need. Someone who's can grow into working on funnels, but also can do the direct sales and things as well.
Yeah, and that may be, a specific person that you're really going to have to be detailed on. I think there's different marketers who fit different parts of the growth journey. Like there's the guy that takes your company from 0 to, 100K, maybe 100K to $1 million. I'm just kind of making these up, but like 1 million to 10 million, 10 million to 100 million. Those might be all different people because of the needed points throughout. But just, you need someone that is really good at the early stage part. But looking forward, in 2019, outside of the marketer itself, what challenges or opportunities are you most excited for this year?
I think, the challenge, so Eventbrite went public, so they're obviously taking it, they've got well over 50% of the market. So they're going to continue to grow. I just, honestly, I think it's an opportunity. I think, so there was another competitor called Ticket Tailor, you may know, a UK company, and they were kind of our one competitor that had fixed pricing, and they've abolished fixed pricing, which on the one hand, maybe it should tell us it's not a good idea, but on the plus side, it means it's just us. We're not really competing with anyone specifically who's doing this kind of pricing model. So we're getting a lot of interest because of that. So I think, that's an opportunity as well. Maybe longer term it'll tell us there's definitely more money in adding on a percentage of ticket fees, which but I think for now, I think this could give us a boost.
We just recently did a survey based on watching a bunch of Profit Well and listening to Patrick Campbell, who we're hopefully going to have on the podcast here soon. Watching a bunch of his stuff about value-based pricing. We've really decided to look at how we do pricing and battle some of the industry outline of how pricing is done for webinars. And we just surveyed a bunch of people. We paid for some paid surveys just to get a better understanding of what people want to pay for, what they think is expensive, what they don't think is, the right features to have. So we're looking at feature segmentation, but also pricing. That's such an interesting question that you guys are going to have to figure out along the way. First of all, what would your target market pay for? What do they feel is valuable? Do they feel like a set price is really that big of a difference if they're having a successful event and they're paying a percentage? Because it may not be people, again, that are having as many events as you are running, and your pain point may be totally different. So I'm interested to hear how it all goes, but sometimes those marketplace kind of shifts help you to figure out where you can win and where you have to kind of shift things.
Sure.
That's awesome. But what I want to do now is jump over to our lightning round questions, 5 quick questions based on your experience, both in, EventsFrame and your prior companies. Let's go ahead and get started on these 5 questions. You ready to get going?
I'm ready to go.
All right, let's do this. What advice would you give for other early stage SaaS companies starting today?
You know what? I'd give the advice we just talked about and say, if you can, get a sales and marketing co-founder from day one, or really have an idea how you're going to sell it. Don't try to figure it out as you go along.
I love that. Not just to focus on technology, focus on marketing and traction along the way.
Yeah.
What skill do you think is vital for marketing teams to improve and build on today?
I think Facebook, just because everybody's telling me this now, and it seems like you can't do sales and marketing without Facebook. We haven't even talked about it on this, but it seems like the one thing that everyone is focusing on now.
Facebook marketing specifically, with advertising?
Yeah, paid ads and Facebook, paid advertising, but also just marketing on Facebook.
Got it. What about a best educational resource you'd recommend for learning about marketing or growth?
I really like a podcast, This Week in Startups, with Rob Walling and Mike Tabor. I'm not sure if you know it. I actually ran MicroConf Europe with Mike and Rob, so I know those guys well. And actually, I have to say, not just because you're interviewing me, but you have a lot of really cool interviews. I've been going through them this afternoon, so I'd say your podcast I'm going to add to the list of resources.
That's awesome. We made your list. That's fantastic. What about a favorite tool you can't live without?
Really simple, basic one, but G Suite. I honestly can't understand why anybody isn't using Google. I'm not sure if you are or not.
Absolutely.
But I just find everything, Google Drive, Gmail. I even moved from an iPhone to a Pixel phone to have better integration. But I think it's just such a no-brainer for most businesses. Yeah,
I used to have a Pixel too. I love Google. I really love their apps and everything like that. I love Apple too, but the Google Suite, like you said, I'm so intertwined with it, with business and everything. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
What about a brand, business, or team that you admire today?
I really like the Basecamp guys, formerly 37 Signals. I guess when I was kind of getting into the entrepreneurial thing and a bit of an entrepreneur fanboy, they put out great content, a lot of good podcast interviews. I bought their books, and they were one of the early companies, I guess, along with WordPress, doing the remote team thing, which is what I do as well, on a big scale. So that's what I'd say.
I love it. We do it too. We're huge followers of them. Shout out to their newest book. It doesn't have to be crazy at work. That was a fantastic book. If you guys haven't read it,
I haven't read it yet as well. That's next on the list.
It's really good. It's really good. But thank you so much for jumping on with me today, Dan. It was a real pleasure to talk to you, to learn about your journey so far with EventsFrame. I know you're still early stage, but these kind of conversations, getting the new lens, the new perspective on the different sizes of companies, the struggles, the tactics, the things that work are always so helpful. And, I just really appreciate you coming on and sharing.
Thank you very much, David. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Wow, what an amazing episode. Just a big thank you and a big shout out to Dan Taylor and the entire founding team over at EventsFrame for allowing us to learn so much about their journey so far. It's always incredible to hear from so many of you SaaS marketers, SaaS founders, where you are in the journey, the struggles that you've had, the lessons that you've learned. It's inspiring. It helps the entire SaaS marketplace, this entire community, especially us who utilize a lot of these tactics and things that we get to listen to every week. And if you enjoyed episodes like this, please don't hesitate to continue these conversations inside of our SaaS Breakthrough community. It's a free Facebook group that we are building, totally free. Just come in. We have these guest speakers, people invited to join us there. Just go to demio.com/FB and we'll get you that access. Now, if you also want to get the show notes, the recordings, all the other episodes, head over to our blog. That's learn.demio.com and we'll get you access to every single episode, transcripts, everything you need. And of course, like I mentioned at the beginning, we would absolutely love to hear from you on iTunes. Don't forget to leave us a rating, a review. These things really, really, really help us get this podcast out to a bigger audience, more marketers like yourself, and just help us to improve our marketplace. Truly hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Do you want to sell more tickets to your amazing events? EventsFrame event ticketing has been built to minimize the amount of time it takes to buy a ticket. Result? You sell more tickets. Check out EventsFrame.com.